My father tried to force me to marry the ruthless and unhinged crown prince. I refused, so I ran away. And while I was on the run, I happened to pick up a warm, handsome young man as my boyfriend. Brother Xiao, you're so good to me. Unlike my fiancé, he kills people at the drop of a hat like some kind of psycho. He smiled gently and calmly. As long as is happy. But then one day, I saw with my own eyes that he had the exact same scar on his neck as the crown prince. My eyes rolled back, and I nearly dropped dead on the spot. Where is the young lady? I'm sure I saw her come this way just now. Man, she really can run. We've been looking for her for 5 whole months. Outside, the sound of my father's guards rustling through the bushes kept coming closer. Meanwhile, I was squeezed into a tiny back room with Zhu Xiao, heart pounding with anxiety. Zhu Xiao held me tightly in his arms, gently stroking my hair as he whispered, "Don't be scared, Yuer. It's hidden well here. They won't find us." I buried my face deeper into his chest. Ugh. I've been running for 5 months, and they've been chasing me for 5 months. Every single day, it's either escaping or getting ready to escape. I felt utterly miserable. Why on earth did my father insist on marrying me off to the crown prince? Did he not know what kind of man the crown prince was? The thought made me clutch Zhu Xiao's robe tightly as I grit my teeth and said, "Brother Xiao, you probably don't know. My fiancé has a hideously scary face, and he takes joy in killing people. If I marry him, I'll be tortured to death for sure. But my father is dead set on sending me to him." Zhu Xiao's lips curved faintly, his eyes glinting with something unreadable. "So Yuer really despises your fiancé, hmm?" Thinking of that brutal, bloodthirsty prince, I shuddered and nodded fiercely. Exactly. That bastard should rot in hell. From an angle I couldn't see, Zhu Xiao quietly stroked my hair, closed his eyes, and let out a soft sigh, half amused, half helpless. That fiancé of yours is probably experiencing, for the first time in his life, what it feels like to be insulted over and over again. The reason I hated the crown prince so much was because I wasn't originally from this world. I'd transmigrated into a novel. The crown prince was the main villain, a tyrant who held absolute power in the palm of his hand. He was reclusive, arrogant, and cruel beyond reason. In 25 years of life, he had never once shown mercy to anyone. Everyone said he had the face of a saint and the heart of a devil. As for me, I was just a disposable side character who showed up in 3 chapters, only to be casually killed by the crown prince. In the original story, my character married him for wealth and power, only to be coldly strangled to death by him on a rainy night. And the worst part? At this point in the story, the male and female leads were only 10 years old. I didn't even have the chance to latch onto the protagonist's golden thigh. So, the moment I arrived in this world, I made up my mind to run. While the engagement hadn't yet been formalized, I was going to escape, far, far away. On the 15th day of my escape, I accidentally wandered into a temple. That's where I first saw Zhu Xiao. How do I even describe that moment? He was dressed in flowing blue robes, his features soft and refined, like a polished jade. The hem of his robes drifted like clouds as he held a strand of prayer beads, speaking quietly with a monk. When he saw me approaching, Zhu Xiao gave a courteous nod. Mississippi. He was breathtakingly handsome, and with that calm, scholarly aura, I was instantly drawn to him. I couldn't help myself. I asked if he was already engaged. When he said no, I shamelessly clung to him under the excuse of being travel companions. But Zhu Xiao never seemed annoyed. No matter how outrageous or inappropriate my words were, he always smiled gently and responded with grace. Even after we started dating, he never crossed the line, at most holding hands, maybe a kiss. Nothing more. He really was a pure-hearted young man with impeccable gentlemanly conduct. They're gone. Zhu Xiao's voice brought me back to reality as we huddled together in that abandoned temple. My father's men, after failing to find me, had finally left. Once I was sure they were gone, I let out a deep breath of relief. Looking at Zhu Xiao's otherworldly good looks, something stirred inside me. I couldn't help it. I lunged forward, wrapped my arms around his neck, and planted a kiss right on his lips. MPH.
Yeah.
I could feel Zhu Xiao's breath becoming uneven. His face and ears flushed a soft red. But he'd gotten used to my impulsiveness. Without much hesitation, he wrapped his arms around me and deepened the kiss. Suddenly, a startled voice came from the temple door. "Hey now, in broad daylight? You young folks are really something." An old beggar, clearly flustered, covered a little beggar's eyes and mumbled something about "see no evil." My face lit up like a firecracker. I shoved Zhu Xiao away and bolted out the door with my hands over my face. Oh my God. Someone actually saw me making out with my boyfriend. Kill me now. You just head home first. I'll go buy a roast duck and meet you back later. I was too embarrassed to face him, so I fled to the street. While wandering around to buy roast duck, I came across a small stall selling accessories. A pale green jade pendant caught my eye. It was translucent and lovely. Maybe not as fancy as the ones worn by nobles in the capital, but rare and elegant in its own way. It really suited Zhu Xiao's vibe. So I bought the pendant, picked up the roast duck, and headed back to the little courtyard we had rented together. Your Highness, when do you plan to return to the capital? The court is still waiting for you to come back and take control of the situation. At some point, a shadow guard in black had silently appeared in the room, now kneeling respectfully before Zhu Xiao. Zhu Xiao was casually fiddling with a rouge box on my dressing table, his expression utterly nonchalant. Let's wait until yours had her fill of fun. The guard hesitated. But, Your Highness, Minister Xiao has long intended to marry Miss Xiao to you. It might be better if you reveal your identity and bring her back to the capital for the wedding. Zhu Xiao's face turned cold, his pitch-black eyes suddenly sharp and filled with killing intent. Since when did you have the right to speak on matters between me and yours? I wouldn't dare. If I had been there, I would have been absolutely stunned. Because this version of Zhu Xiao was nothing like the one I knew. Usually, he was as gentle as polished jade, but right now, his eyes were filled with a murderous edge, like a demon ready to kill. Unfortunately, I returned home at that exact moment and walked in on this scene. Zhu Xiao's eyes were as deep and cold as a still, black lake. For a fleeting moment, something like bloodlust shimmered within them. Xiao, Zhu Xiao. The jade pendant I had just bought for him slipped from my fingers and shattered on the ground with a sharp crack. I staggered back a step in disbelief, my heart slowly filling with dread. Why did he look like this? Zhu Xiao in this moment looked nothing like the man who once held prayer beads in his hand and smiled so gently. He looked more like the crown prince from the rumors, devastatingly handsome, but cruel to the core. A man with the face of a fallen immortal and the heart of a monster. When he saw me standing there, Zhu Xiao lifted his eyes lazily, lips curling in a faint, ambiguous smile. A low chuckle slipped from his throat. TSK? Looks like you saw something she shouldn't have. What a pain. Zhu Xiao stepped toward me slowly, but I felt rooted to the spot, unable to move an inch. In that moment, a terrifying image flashed through my mind. The crown prince in my dream, the one who killed without blinking. The truth was, I hadn't transmigrated like those lucky heroines who wake up as noble ladies surrounded by concerned maids crying, "Miss, you're finally awake." No, I had landed straight into the crown prince's private quarters in the middle of trying to assault him. The original Zhao, when you had taken advantage of the crown prince being drunk after a palace banquet. She had snuck into his bedchamber, intending to do something that children should know about. And I had arrived right at that exact moment. Half my clothes were already off. My dress was on the floor, bearing my collarbone and part of my shoulder. The crown prince, clearly drunk, was reclining on a chaise lounge behind a decorative screen, staring straight at me. I couldn't see his face, but I heard his voice loud and clear. "If you take one more step, I will make sure you die without a grave." His voice was low and ice-cold, every syllable chilling to the bone. Even without seeing him, I could feel the murderous glare pinning me in place. I trembled violently, then snapped out of it, grabbed my scattered clothes, and bolted without looking back. And apparently, news of me fleeing half-dressed from the crown prince's quarters made its way to the emperor. The emperor was already considering issuing a decree to have Zhu Xiao marry me. That same night, I realized the awful truth. I had transmigrated into a novel. My name was Zhao Wanyu, the legitimate daughter of the Minister of Revenue. I had a terrible reputation in the capital. Everyone said I was arrogant and attention-seeking. In the original plot, I had tried to sneak into the crown prince's quarters during a palace banquet, stripping my clothes and throwing myself at him. After being rejected, I still refused to give up, and instead ran out half-dressed, spreading rumors that the crown prince had taken advantage of me. Left with no choice, the emperor issued a decree forcing the crown prince to marry me as his secondary consort. And not long after marrying him, I was strangled to death. In my dream, I couldn't see his face clearly, but those vicious, soulless eyes haunted me. They felt like they were carving me apart, piece by piece. I woke up soaked in cold sweat, immediately packed my things, and ran for my life. And now, just when I thought I'd finally erased the crown prince's terrifying image from my mind, I found out that the sweet, gentle Zhu Xiao I'd fallen in love with was exactly that kind of person too.
Ha ha ha.
What is this? Are psycho princes just lying around in this world like cheap cabbages? A bead of cold sweat slid down my temple. What's on your mind, Yuer? Zhu Xiao reached out, long fingers gently tucking a loose strand of hair behind my ear. His voice was soft and soothing. Were you thinking about your fiancé? The mention of the crown prince made my neck ache, as if I were being strangled out of nowhere. I quickly shook my head. Zhu Xiao touched my head, his dark eyes holding a smile, but it didn't reach their depths. Something about it sent a chill down my spine. Good. Then, where would you like to go next, Yuer? He paused to think, then said, Didn't you say you love the waterscapes of Jiangnan? How about Qiantang? His tone remained soft and pleasant, chatting like nothing had happened. I could only nod, stunned and unsure how to respond. That night, I lay in bed beside Zhu Xiao. His soft, rhythmic breathing suggested he had already fallen asleep. I turned my head to look at him, a little dazed. Honestly, Zhu Xiao was incredibly good-looking. Even in sleep, he looked like a figure painted in a celestial scroll, so ethereal, so untouchable, it made me feel like there was an invisible distance between us. I couldn't resist reaching out to brush his forehead. But the next second, Zhu Xiao opened his eyes and caught my hand mid-movement. His gaze was sharp and clear, not the slightest bit sleepy. He stared directly into my eyes and asked, Can't sleep? I shook my head. Not really. I'd been thinking things through. Doesn't everyone have a dark side? Before I transmigrated, even the girls who called me their soul sister would gossip behind my back like crazy. And the teacher who always said she treated every student like her own child? She cursed us out the second you didn't give her a red envelope. Zhu Xiao had always been gentle, but that didn't mean he didn't have a temper. Even a rabbit bites when it's pushed too far. Thinking that, I smiled and kissed him on the lips with a playful mwah. You scared the hell out of me earlier. I almost thought my awful fiancé had come to get me. I gave him a mock glare. Zhu Xiao smiled, rolled over, and pinned me beneath him. His long, pale hands were already tugging at the ties of my inner robe. Forgive me, Yuer. A servant came to report some family affairs. Did I frighten you? As the sash slipped loose, my smooth white shoulder was exposed to the air, and the atmosphere in the room instantly turned heated. Zhu Xiao's gaze grew even softer, more tender.
My fault, Yuer.
Let me make it up to you. And with that, Zhu Xiao completely let himself go. Of course, in the end, nothing happened between us. Zhu Xiao was a man with true self-restraint and gentlemanly virtue. He once told me that he would save my first time until after we got married. That only made me like him even more. We weren't far from Qiantang, and with a few days in a carriage, we arrived. It was midsummer in Jiangnan, the southern region shrouded in misty rain. Zhu Xiao and I stood on a bridge, listening to the fading sound of the oar against the water. I couldn't help but start daydreaming. Brother Xiao, why don't we just settle down in Qiantang? As a child, I'd always fantasized about living like a hero from a TV drama, hiding my identity, retiring to a quiet, picturesque town. If Zhu Xiao and I rented a small courtyard home and raised a few chickens and pigs, just imagining it made me feel blissful. Zhu Xiao chuckled softly, his warm voice gently brushing my ears. If you likes it, then of course we can. I was thrilled beyond words. As a girl from the north, I had never lived in the south before. Living in such a poetic, rain-soaked place like Jiangnan, it had always felt like an unreachable dream. We temporarily stayed at an inn. By day we roamed freely like carefree birds. By night we shared a bed, wrapped in affection and love. Just when I thought our life would go on peacefully, like this, my father showed up. Zhao Wenyu, you unfilial brat. He showed up with a group of people, blocking the entrance of the inn. He pointed at me furiously and scolded nonstop. You've always been mischievous, but running away at a time like this? Do you have any idea that His Majesty intends to grant you to the Crown Prince in marriage? Weren't you the one who used to dream of marrying him? I curled my lip. Being a secondary consort is just a fancy way of saying concubine. Dad, you're powerful and resourceful. Can't you find a way to keep me from marrying the Crown Prince? My dad rolled his eyes, so hard I thought they'd fall out. He gritted his teeth. Who told you it's to be a secondary consort? The Crown Prince wants you as his primary wife. Besides, after you ran out of his quarters half-dressed, what decent nobleman in the capital would still marry you? My jaw dropped so wide it could have fit a whole egg. What? Did I hear that right? In the original novel, the Crown Prince only reluctantly took me in as a side consort. I couldn't help asking, Dad, are you sure I'm going to be the Crown Princess? My father snapped impatiently. Of course I'm sure. The Crown Prince personally asked the Emperor for this. And you? You ran away right when you were about to become Crown Princess. It felt like the whole world had gone mad. In the book, the Crown Prince despised me, so why was he suddenly begging to marry me? I hadn't even seen his face properly. The only time we'd been in the same room was behind a screen, and I didn't even get a good look at him. And most importantly, the Crown Prince was a cruel, sadistic maniac. If I married him, I'd be dead in no time. So I didn't hesitate to shake my head.
No.
No way. Not even a dog would marry him. Zhao Wenyu, how dare you? My father was so furious his mustache practically curled. He waved his hand, and the servants rushed forward to grab me. But I saw the opportunity and made a run for it. Unfortunately, his personal guards weren't just for show. One of them grabbed my arm and yanked me back forcefully. Young miss, please stop struggling and just come back with the master, the servant said firmly. I shouted, I won't marry him. I'd rather die than marry him. My father climbed into the carriage heading back to the capital. He glanced at me sideways and said blandly, Then die. I won't stop you. Tears welled up and streamed down both cheeks. At that moment, I felt incredibly lucky Zhu Xiao had gone out to line up for roast duck. If my father had seen him, he probably would have ordered the servants to beat him to death on the spot. Before I left, I secretly made a hand gesture to the innkeeper. He nodded in understanding. And just like that, Zhu Xiao and I were separated. The carriage jostled along the road. I sat inside, torn over whether or not I should tell my father the truth about Zhu Xiao. If I said something, my dad might act impulsively and get him killed. My father was a second-rank official in the court. Snuffing out a man like Zhu Xiao wouldn't even be difficult for him. But if I said nothing, after wrestling with myself for a while, I decided to test the waters. Dad, actually, I already have someone I love, someone who feels the same way. He gave me a quick glance and snorted. Didn't you say you'd only marry the Crown Prince? You've barely been gone a few weeks, and you're already chasing a new guy. I lowered my head awkwardly. The carriage rumbled on. My father didn't ask about my so-called lover again, not even a word about who he was. But then again, considering what my character was like in the original story, I wasn't surprised. The original Zhao Wenyu was a notoriously overbearing young lady in the capital, always dragging a clique of pampered daughters around, throwing her weight around the city. So falling in love with someone new every other day? That kind of behavior totally tracked. Suddenly, I felt a little miserable. Noticing my mood, my father shot me a glare. Just go home and wait to marry the crown prince. As for that little lover boy of yours, TSK, TSK, TSK. And when you get back, stay out of trouble. Stop hanging around with that pack of spoiled friends of yours. Just sit tight and wait to get married. Clearly, my father didn't think twice about Zhu Xiao. To him, the crown prince was a man of status, stability, and power. If I married him, I'd want for nothing the rest of my life. And once the crown prince ascended the throne, I'd be the empress. No one would dare bully me then. Strangely enough, I suddenly felt a little moved. Anyone else might have beaten their runaway daughter half to death. But my father? He never once raised a hand or yelled too harshly. All he ever thought about was what was best for me. Sniff, in that moment, I was actually kind of jealous of the original Zhao Wenyu for having such a good father. Still, being touched was one thing, but what about Zhu Xiao? In the end, I wasn't the real Zhao Wenyu. I didn't share her bond with his father. There wasn't much emotional connection between us at all. When Zhu Xiao returned with 2 parcels of roast duck in his hands, he saw the innkeeper standing at the door with a distressed expression. As soon as he saw him, the innkeeper hurried over. Your Highness, not long after you left, Miss Zhao's father arrived and took her away. We couldn't stop him even if we wanted to. Zhu Xiao's expression was calm. He gave a small nod. I see. This inn was, in fact, run by people under Zhu Xiao's command. When Zhao Wenyu was taken away, the innkeeper had nearly panicked out of his mind. After all, no one knew better than his own subordinates just how ruthless this seemingly otherworldly crown prince could be. But who would have guessed? This same crown prince, who'd never shown interest in any woman before, had actually stayed with this girl every single night. The more the innkeeper thought about it, the more terrified he became. A cold sweat trickled down his forehead. Yet, instead of the explosive fury he had feared, Zhu Xiao merely nodded once, turned around, and walked back to his room. Your Highness, why did you reveal Miss Zhao's whereabouts to her father? The shadow guard asked in confusion. Zhu Xiao rested his chin on one hand, while the other tapped lightly on the armrest of his chair. He replied lazily, A few days ago, Yuer said she wanted to marry me. I asked if she truly meant it, and she said yes. Then he lowered his gaze slightly and gave a soft chuckle. She's been having fun here for over a month, but lately, she keeps saying she misses home. In that case, why not go back to the capital and get married? The shadow guard bowed his head, thinking, young people these days really love their drama. The emperor had already issued a marriage decree between Zhao Wenyu and Zhu Xiao, and yet Zhu Xiao had insisted on hiding his identity just to play out a secret romance. He really couldn't understand it. Not one bit. After a whole month of bumpy travel, I finally returned to the Zhao family residence. Welcome home, young miss. Welcome home, young miss. A row of maids and servants stood neatly at the entrance, shouting in unison with voices loud enough for the entire street to hear. Passers-by all turned to stare. I was so embarrassed I could feel my scalp go numb. My toes curled inside my shoes, as if I were being executed by 1,000 cuts. But I couldn't say anything, because this was my own rule. The original Zhao Wenyu had ordered that every time she returned home, the entire household staff had to line up and loudly welcome her back. Zhao Wenyu, you were truly insane. I awkwardly lowered my head and waved my hand. Stop, please stop yelling. This rule is cancelled starting today. Yes, young miss. And then another thunderous chorus.
Great.
Now it was even worse. My toes might as well start digging a hole into the floor. I wanted nothing more than to bury myself underground. I hurried into the house, following the original Zhao Wenyu's personal maid, Xiao Hong. Once inside my room, Xiao Hong grabbed my hand and burst into tears. Miss, you're finally back. Do you have any idea how worried Master has been these past days? She wiped her eyes and continued excitedly. Didn't you always say you wanted to marry the crown prince? Just recently, His Highness personally requested the Emperor to make you his crown princess. Congratulations, miss. You finally got what you always wanted. I honestly felt so defeated. That was the original Zhao Wenyu who wanted to marry him, not me. But there was no way to explain that. Even when I tried saying I already had someone I loved, everyone thought I was just joking. No one took it seriously. Worst of all, my father placed me under house arrest. Guards were posted all around the residence, and he made it clear. No more hanging out with those useless friends of yours. Stay inside and prepare for your wedding. After several failed escape attempts, the imperial edict officially arrived, declaring me the crown princess. By the mandate of heaven, the emperor decrees, Zhao Wenyu, eldest daughter of the Minister of Revenue, graceful in manner, radiant in beauty, gentle in spirit, elegant in conduct, virtuous and refined, shall be conferred the title of crown princess. The wedding shall be held on an auspicious date. Thus decreed. Miss Zhao, why are you still standing there? Don't tell me you're so happy you've gone dumb? Hurry and accept the decree. I numbly took the scroll, my face stiff with disbelief. This humble daughter accepts the decree. Thank you, Your Majesty, for your immense grace. Help! Why did I have to transmigrate right when the original Zhao Wenyu was stripping down to seduce the crown prince? Couldn't I have arrived a little earlier? Then none of this would have happened. Seeing how dazed I looked, my father laughed as he stroked his beard. He stuffed a silver pouch into the hands of the eunuch who brought the decree. Thank you, Lord Wang, for making the trip. Much appreciated. The old eunuch smiled so hard his face looked like a blooming chrysanthemum. No need to thank me, Minister Zhao. You've raised a fine daughter. After Lord Wang left, my father came over with joy practically radiating from his pores.
Well,
You finally got what you wanted. Tonight, I'm throwing a grand banquet, huh? Our Zhao family has produced a crown princess. Wonderful. Everyone's having the time of their life. And I alone am dying inside. As expected, my father really did throw a banquet at home, inviting a whole crowd of officials. They drank well into the night, and even after I had washed up and returned to my room, Zhu Xiao never showed up. Not only did he not show up, I hadn't heard a single word from him. Lying on my bed, I felt nothing but sadness and disappointment. Was the love between Zhu Xiao and me really going to end like this? The more I thought about it, the more emotionally spiraled I became, until a soft, gentle male voice sounded by the bed. "You're." My body stiffened. I turned toward the voice in disbelief. There, in the dim room, stood a tall figure at the bedside. It was Zhu Xiao, whom I hadn't seen in over a month. He stood poised and graceful, his handsome face wearing a warm and gentle smile. It's been a while. How have you been, Yor? I stared at him, wondering if I was dreaming. Zhu Xiao. He nodded, his beautiful brows drawing slightly together. You look thinner. I bit my lip, sat up, and yanked him straight onto the bed. Dream or not, I was claiming my man first. Heaven knew how anxious and scared I'd been all this time. Every day, I kept wondering if Zhu Xiao would risk coming to the Zhao residence to find me. But more often, I worried whether I'd even survive 3 days after marrying that insane, vicious crown prince. God, I'm terrified of pain. Every time it rained at night, my mind would replay the horrifying image of myself being strangled to death by the mad prince. The more I thought about it, the worse I felt. I threw my arms around Zhu Xiao's waist, buried my head in his chest, and my voice trembled with a hint of tears. I really don't know what to do anymore. When that imperial edict arrived, it felt like the sky was collapsing. You don't understand, he's terrifying. If I marry him, I'll die. He absolutely hates me. Why would he possibly want to marry me sincerely? Zhu Xiao held me gently, tilting his head slightly as a trace of confusion flashed in his eyes. How do you know that? Who told you all this? I looked up, staring him dead in the eyes. It's true. At the palace banquet a few months ago, he said he'd make sure I died without a grave. Zhu Xiao was briefly speechless, as if he didn't know how to respond. After a long silence, he let out a sigh. Maybe even he regrets treating you like that. That sentence made no sense. I mentally tuned it out like total nonsense. Brother Xiao, you came here tonight. Do you have a way to get me out of here? I looked at him, full of hope. But the answer he gave crushed it.
Zhu Xiao shook his head.
The imperial decree has been issued. Your marriage to the crown prince is already set in stone. I froze. Really? There's really no way out. Suddenly, I wanted to strangle the original Zhao Wanyu. She was a perfectly good, noble daughter. What possessed her to sneak into the crown prince's bedchamber? Did she have a death wish? She basically dug her own grave. And now me, the poor transmigrator, was stuck cleaning up the mess, forced to marry the villain of the story. A sense of utter helplessness settled over me. I looked at Zhu Xiao with resentment in my eyes. So, what now? Are you going to break up with me? He gave the same gentle, soft smile as always.
No.
I won't break up with you. His face showed not even a trace of sadness. A wave of anger suddenly rose in my chest. Your girlfriend's about to marry another man, and you're not upset at all? You're even smiling? Smiling. I was furious. I grabbed his shoulders, shoved him down, and bit his lip hard. There was nothing tender about the kiss. It was pure emotional outburst. But Zhu Xiao didn't get mad. He wrapped his arms around my waist and kissed me back, deepening it. After a long while, I finally slumped beside him, panting, and muttered in despair. I'm going to marry the crown prince. Unless the emperor takes back his command, there's no chance for us. If I defied the edict and ran, the Zhao family would be executed to the last man. I couldn't be selfish and let my happiness cost everyone their lives. But if I went through with the wedding and still kept in touch with Zhu Xiao, once our affair came to light, my family would be doomed anyway. Unless the emperor revoked the edict, there was no way forward for us. Zhu Xiao's lips curved slightly as he hugged me tighter. But what if I became the emperor? My pupils shrank. I gasped in shock. What the hell? Are you planning a coup? All for me, a coup d'etat? My mind instantly flashed through a dozen dramatic novel tropes. After 6 years as his empress, everyone said he loved me deeply. But one day, I found out he had a secret son who was already 3. 3 years into our marriage, he grew tired of me. On my birthday banquet, he returned with a pregnant woman. I started to panic. And never mind whether Zhu Xiao could even pull off such a thing. Men who start out like this in stories always bring home some pregnant woman a few years later. Zhu Xiao shook his head, a doting smile appearing in his eyes as he ruffled my hair. His voice was warm and deep. Don't overthink it. I'll find a way to handle everything. We're not over. Just stay here and behave for now, okay? I didn't really understand what he meant. I wanted to ask more questions, but somehow, the soft fragrance on his body drifted into my nose, making me feel inexplicably sleepy. My eyelids began to droop. Sleep, you are. His voice was like a lullaby. I drifted off, never managing to ask him what I wanted to know. Zhu Xiao left just before dawn. Upon returning to the residence, he sat at the desk in his study and rubbed his temples, which were beginning to ache. Your Highness, said the shadow guard, puzzled, if you truly care for Miss Zhao, why won't you tell her your real identity? Zhu Xiao fiddled with the jade pendant in his hand, which now had several cracks in it. His lips curled into a faint smile. It's punishment, that's all. At that banquet not long ago, he had been drinking. When he returned to his chambers to rest, that little girl had barged into his room. She took off her outer robe in front of him, trying to summon her courage as she attempted to seduce him. She even softened her voice and coyly called him, Your Highness. Just as she was about to step past the screen, her foot slipped. She fell to the ground and passed out. Zhu Xiao had been about to summon someone to drag her out, when she suddenly woke up. The bold and brash girl stared at him wide-eyed and muttered under her breath, Shit, the evil villain. Is he gonna kill me? And then he watched, amused, as Zhao Wanyu scrambled to gather her clothes, frantically mumbling, "Oh my god," and shit, before bolting out of the room without even looking back. Her before and after reaction couldn't have been more different. If she had actually dared to step past that screen to seduce him, Zhu Xiao would have snapped her neck without hesitation. But the girl who woke up and fled? She was stupid, but adorably so. He figured he could spare her for now. But if the man in the room hadn't been him, at that thought, a shadow flickered in Zhu Xiao's eyes. When I woke up, Zhu Xiao was already gone. Then news came from the palace. Consort Mei was hosting a flower viewing banquet and had invited a number of noble young ladies to attend. I immediately started to feel uneasy. If I went into the palace, there was a high chance I'd run into the crown prince. But Consort Mei had specifically requested my presence. I couldn't exactly refuse a command from her. After weighing my options, I finally asked Xiaohong to help me wash up and dress. I braced myself and entered the palace once more. At the flower banquet, a dozen or so beautiful girls gathered around Consort Mei, who wore a lavish palace gown. They sipped tea and admired the blossoms in the imperial garden. My arrival felt abrupt and awkward. When Consort Mei saw me, she raised her hand to her mouth and chuckled softly. "Ah, it's the younger Miss Zhao. I haven't yet congratulated you on becoming the future crown princess." Then she had someone bring over a box covered with red silk. When the cloth was lifted, it revealed a pair of jade bracelets. She took my hand and personally slipped the bracelets onto my wrist.
We're family now, dear.
No need to be so reserved. The other young ladies quickly gathered around to offer their congratulations. As someone who struggles with social anxiety, I found the whole situation deeply uncomfortable. And then, a eunuch came to deliver a message. The crown prince wanted to see me. The crown prince. He wanted to see me. The ruthless, psychotic crown prince, Xie Qingxiao. Cold sweat broke out all over my body. Given the choice, I'd rather keep awkwardly chatting with these pretty noble girls than go see him.
But it wasn't up to me.
The crown prince summoned me. I had to go. Like a prisoner being marched to the gallows, I followed the young eunuch all the way to the palace hall, where Xie Qingxiao awaited. The palace hall was dimly lit, only a few candles burning. It felt so dreamlike, I almost thought it was night. "Miss Zhao, His Highness has instructed us to cover your eyes." I blinked in confusion. Two palace maids stood before me, each holding a black silk ribbon in their hands, poised and proper.
Huh?
What? I hadn't even processed what they'd said. Seeing my dazed expression, the maids repeated patiently, "Miss, the crown prince has ordered us to blindfold you with this scarf." This time, I was well and truly stunned. What kind of weird fetish does this Xie Qingxiao have? We're just meeting. Why on earth does he need to cover my eyes? Unless his face is horribly disfigured, and he's afraid I'll be scared off. The maids, of course, didn't explain anything. They were just following orders. With a soft "forgive us," they tied the silk ribbon over my eyes. Now I could see nothing, only vague shadows through the dark fabric. Once they finished, they bowed and withdrew. "Please wait here for His Highness. We'll take our leave." The two maids left, and I was alone, sitting awkwardly in the vast palace hall. I desperately wanted to pull the blindfold off, but I was more afraid of Xie Qingxiao walking in and flying into a rage. So I stayed where I was, obediently waiting. Time passed slowly, and drowsiness crept in. Just as I was about to doze off, a familiar voice suddenly called out, "You're..." I flinched and opened my eyes wide under the blindfold.
It was Zhu Xiao.
Zhu Xiao was calling my name. How the hell did he sneak into the crown prince's private quarters? Before I could process it, footsteps echoed through the hall. Through the silk, I saw the blurred figure of a tall man entering, but I couldn't make out his face. Still, the oppressive air he carried with him made me choke down the words "Brother Xiao" on the spot. That wasn't Zhu Xiao. That was the crown prince, Xie Qingxiao. I bit my lower lip, forcing myself to stay calm. Whatever happens, do not provoke this lunatic. Xie Qingxiao slowly approached until he stopped right in front of me. I could feel his burning gaze on me, so intense I could barely breathe. Your Highness. I managed to squeeze the words out of my dry throat. He didn't respond. The next second, Xiao reached out and gripped my chin, forcing me to tilt my head up. His pitch-black eyes stared down at me, cold and sharp, as if dissecting something. I squeezed my eyes shut, digging my nails so hard into my palms, I nearly bled.
He's terrifying.
A real villain to the core. Even his aura was bone-chilling. What made it worse was that in the original story, the male and female leads hadn't even appeared yet. They were just 10-year-old kids. 10-year-olds against a 20-something psychopath? I didn't even dare imagine it. Zhao Yu, you're trembling, aren't you? Xiao finally spoke. His voice was low, deep, and oddly familiar. I didn't have time to figure out why it sounded so familiar because Xiao, oh God, he leaned in, his lips brushing against my ear. His warm breath tickled my skin, making me shiver all over, as if I'd just been electrocuted. Oh no. Is he going to kiss my ear? Images from the original novel flew through my mind at lightning speed. But none of them ever said Xiao would do this to a woman. God help me, why is the plot falling apart like this? Just as I was about to blurt out, Your Highness, please don't, he spoke again. His voice was low, laced with a smirk, whispering at my ear. Wouldn't want him to see what we're doing, would we, my crown princess? My mind went completely blank. My heart skipped a beat. What did you say? The hall was silent, and I could hear nothing but my own pounding heartbeat. A moment later, Xiao chuckled. Oh, you know exactly what I said. I felt as though I'd been dropped into a pit of ice. It's over. He found out. He knew about me and Zhu Xiao. Not only that, he even knew where Zhu Xiao had been hiding. What do I do? Should I immediately beg for mercy, deny everything, pretend Zhu Xiao means nothing to me? Or should I stand with Zhu Xiao and brace for the crown prince's wrath? My thoughts were a jumbled mess. I couldn't think straight. All I could do was clutch Xiao's robe, my voice trembling. Your Highness. A rough laugh rumbled from his throat. His long fingers brushed over my cheek, and he said in that deep, hoarse voice, Want him to live? Your father and the entire Zhao family too? I clutched his robe tighter and nodded. Xiao seemed satisfied. He bent down and scooped me into his arms, placing me on the couch, then leaned over and pinned me beneath him. The room dissolved into chaos. By the time I returned to the Zhao residence, it was already late. My father wanted to see me, but I didn't go. I went straight to my room, threw myself onto the bed, and pulled the blanket over my head. Everything that had happened today was far beyond what I could handle. I started to seriously question what kind of novel I'd transmigrated into. For a moment, I even wondered if I'd become the heroine of an R-rated romance novel. Lying there, I dismissed the maids and stared blankly at the ceiling, alone in the room, until a warm, familiar voice sounded beside me. Why did you go to bed without eating tonight? The sound of Zhu Xiao's voice made my whole body tense. I didn't know how to face him, so I shoved myself deeper into the blankets. Zhu Xiao let out a soft sigh, lifted the covers, and gently pulled me into his arms. Eat a little something. He brought pastries from who knows where. They were still warm, and held one up to my lips. I had no appetite at all. I shook my head with a sulky no.
Zhu Xiao seemed to sense my mood.
He pressed his lips together, then suddenly pulled me into a firm embrace. Don't be scared, Yor. No matter what, I'm here with you. My eyes welled up with tears, but before I could fully wallow in my emotions, I caught sight of a scratch on the back of Zhu Xiao's neck. It was from earlier that day, in the Crown Prince's bedchamber, when we'd, scrambled around and gotten too rough. I'd accidentally scratched his neck. At the time, I'd panicked that Xiao would notice, but he'd been too caught up to feel the sting. And now, Zhu Xiao had that very same scratch. That's when it finally hit me. I shoved Zhu Xiao away, kicking him right off the bed. I finally understood why, earlier in the day, Xiao insisted on blindfolding me. Because they were never two different people to begin with. They were the same man. He'd been lying to me all along, treating me like a fool. Furious, I grabbed the pillow and hurled it at him, screaming, Xie Xiao, get the hell out. Zhu Xiao, or rather, Xie Xiao, had a faint smile in his eyes. You is smarter than I expected. He sat back on the bed, reached out his long arm, and pulled me into his arms again, ruffling my hair as he gently soothed. Don't be mad. It was my fault. There won't be a next time. I kicked at him with gritted teeth. So, you were planning on doing this again, weren't you? Xie Xiao's dark eyes narrowed slightly, lips curled into an amused smile. I wouldn't dare.
Don't be angry, Yu.
It took me a long time to calm down. I finally asked him why he had lied to me, hiding behind a fake name. He said, at the palace banquet that night, you didn't even know who I was, and yet you barged into my chambers and tried to ahem. He was referring to the original Zhao when you trying to seduce him. Honestly, I was beyond done. That wasn't me. It was the original Zhao on you. But there was no way I could explain that this body had a brand new soul inside. So this time, I had no choice but to accept that I'd been played. Furious but helpless, I spent half the night smacking him with a pillow. The next morning at breakfast, my father was staring at me with a weird expression on his face. I had no idea why he was looking at me like that. Dad, why are you staring at me like that? He kept staring for a while. Finally, he said, you've been moping around these last few days, but yesterday after you came back from the palace, you seemed suddenly cheerful again. What? You not pining over that Qiantang lover boy of yours anymore? My cheeks instantly flushed red. What was there to pine over anymore? Zhu Xiao and Xie Xiao were the same person. That runaway romance of mine had always been with the crown prince. So I took a huge bite out of my bun and muttered, I want both my lover and the crown prince. My father's hand trembled. His chopsticks clattered to the floor. You've lost your mind. You've truly lost your mind. The end.